absolutely a no-brainer. It's unbelievable that it's taken us till 2009 in this country, a country full of visionaries and great political thinkers.
Well, we used to do it in a sort up until the sort of end of the 60s.
And I mean, if you look at the heroin addicts before the 70s, the overwhelming majority of them, 90%, were doctors and nurses who could get a clean supply of heroin. What's really messing drug users, heroin users up, is the fact that their drugs are cut with all sorts of, the amount of heroin in the heroin they use is tiny, right? Now, my argument's economic, okay? I don't want that money to be going to drug barons and overlords and gangs, right? That's why I think we need to look at legalising drugs across the board.
Excellent.
Let's tax it, yeah? If we're spending NHS money on drug users and addicts, let's tax it so that we've got money in the NHS to look after them. And before we get on our high horses about feeding people's addictions, let me take you by the hand to any ward in any hospital in any town or city in this country full of smokers who are craving their addiction, full of alcoholics who are craving their addiction. If we started again, if we'd carte blanche and started again with legalising certain drugs and certain other drugs, we would legalise heroin, believe it or not, and we would not legalise tobacco, and we would not legalise alcohol.
I do suspect you might be right. We're going to go to Larry next. What do you think?
Well, I have to say, although I understand the economic argument, and personally, I'm not that bothered about the health of a heroin addict. I am bothered about not having my house broken into. I am bothered about not having my car broken into, my laptop stolen, because I think it's your choice if you take that drug, but it's not my choice to have my house broken into. So, but I do think that we do have to think about the families of those who have a drug addiction. And there is a worry that this is saying that actually the addiction is okay, without looking at the wider effect of addiction on families.
Hang on. If I had a son, if I had a street junkie, though, you might very well be prostituting yourself. That's not going to do much for your family. I agree,
but if I had a son, if my son was much older than he is now, I'm just trying to think of how it would be. Let's say he was 25, and let's say he'd been using heroin for 5 years, and he'd got himself into a lot of trouble that way. My heart would be, I just want the state to help him get off the heroin. Now, if they partner these clinics with real efforts to help people to come off, then I would be absolutely supportive of that. I just think we need to think carefully.
That's absolutely the point, Larry. If you're going to get somebody off heroin, where do you want them to be taking heroin? In a clean clinical environment where it's pure heroin.
But the argument is that somebody will never battle an addiction until they hit rock bottom. Now, you are saving them from rock bottom by allowing them to inject safely. So there is that argument, because it's about psychology as well as about the physiology of it all. And I do think that it's not a kind of victimless crime. Being an addict, yes, you're a victim, but you also create other victims around yourself.
OK. I want to come to you, Richard. I want to know which perspective you come at it from.
I agree with Hard, absolutely, without any doubt. I think all drugs should be legalised, and we should pick up the pieces. It makes much more sense. They're there. They're going to exist. You can't pretend that you're just waving a magic wand that they're going to disappear. They're there. They're in society, and we've seen people fall by the wayside. What we do is we pick up people with alcoholism. If you look at the millions and millions of people who drink, and the very few who become alcoholics, but I mean the percentage is really tiny. And what we do when we got friends and loved ones that have got a problem with booze, we do our best to try and make things better and get them off it. And I think the same thing will happen if we legalise the drugs. This is a good move. And as Hardip said, the people in the clinic...
Is it the NHS's job to maintain an addiction rather than cure it?
NHS is part of a social welfare state. It's not a separate... It's part of society, the whole of society. It's not just in a little kind of vacuum of its own. It's the whole deal. We're out in the streets. It's our life. It's our world. Okay. And we've got to make sure that people get the best out of it, and we get the best out of people. Okay. And this is the right step in the right direction.
I come at it from Larry's perspective, which is I don't like my house being burgled, and as it has been turned over by junkies in the past, and this is one way of stopping that happening. I think that's how I would get benefit from it as a taxpayer into the NHS. What about you? Is this what the health service should be offering heroin addicts? Let's see what you've got to say. Kirsty.
Sarah's on line 3. She thinks it's a good idea.
Morning, Sarah.
Morning.
Good idea. You wouldn't mind one in your town?
Well, I do think it's a good idea, yeah. We've been trying for years to beat this problem, and it's not working. It's more prevalent. The whole point is the whole stigma that gets kids enticed into doing it. You're not going to go along to some dodgy dealer at the end of the park for some drugs that have been cut with goodness knows what. If you can go to a safe, clean environment, get the real thing, the whole appeal that draws kids into it, the lifestyle and everything will go. You won't get ODs from people dying, hepatitis, HIV. All those sort of things will be ceased.
And the NHS, I mean, its part in this, if it becomes, you know, a health service rolled out across health services across the country, I mean...
I think there's a big thing in this, that there's a huge... That the government are daft. They're just too scared to make this decision. I know it's quite a radical decision, but think about it. It will totally kill the black market. Organised crime.
Well, I mean, that's the argument really for legalised drugs, isn't it? I mean, this is like a little slice of that argument, which is the NHS giving free drugs to registered heroin addicts. It's not the whole argument about legalising drugs, which we've done before and we'll do again. It's just whether or not the health service should be maintaining an addiction rather than treating an addiction.
I think overall it would pay for itself.
I'm sure it would. It's just whether the health service, whether doctors, whether medics should be involved in maintaining an addiction rather than treating it.
These are the people that are qualified to make sure that things are done safely and correctly in the right environment.
But I say again,
they are there to help people, and it is helping people.
But that's maintaining an addiction, not curing an addiction, if that is the right word.
Once you've got people into that situation, then you can start to help bring them down on it in a controlled way.
Right, and the lady in that video was saying that, you know, because she wasn't spending, I don't know how she got the money in the past. A lot of people, as I said, will prostitute themselves and spend all day robbing and thieving. Because she's not having to do that, she has time to spend on her life, which is, you know...
Spending money on food, actually starting, looking for a job. The whole social sort of welfare of people's lives will improve.
OK, Sarah, thank you very much. Let's have another.
Kirsty's on line 2.
Another Kirsty, good morning.
Good morning.
OK, what do you think?
I've got no problem in principle, but I really don't think the money should be taken out the NHS budget. I lost the use of my legs 2 years ago, and I still haven't got a diagnosis yet. And to be taken up to a London hospital to have further tests, the waiting list is a year. We have people wanting life-saving cancer treatments and be told that's too expensive. People with Alzheimer's can't have the drugs because that's too expensive. It is not my choice to be disabled. It's not somebody's choice to get cancer. It is somebody's choice to take drugs. So if the government are going to do it, I really don't think they should take the money out of the NHS budget.
Maybe put a tax on all the insurance companies that will suddenly be quids in because people's homes won't get burgled.
That's fine. I don't care where the money comes from, but I don't think you should take it from an overstretched NHS service already where there's people crying out for drugs, for conditions that they have no control over.
Hearing you loud and clear. Thank you, Kirsty. Go on,
Andy's on line 5.
Sorry.
I think there's a wider point here. If you look at the example, for example, with cannabis, the rise of skunk, which is this kind of terribly divisive strain of cannabis. I absolutely understand what the lady's saying about, you know, Kirsty's saying, but if we stop kids smoking skunk, right, the money we spend on stopping them doing that is money we save very, very quickly, because there'd be less kids with, you know, depression, with schizophrenia and with the rest. We will save money, Kirsty. We will save money by paying for these junkies.
And we'll go to our caller.
Andy.
Andy, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Do you think this is a good idea, Andy?
Yes, I do. I'm 60 years old and I've been a junkie since I was in my mid-20s.
Wow, long time. Long time.
I'm on a methadone program now, and methadone is it's a much worse habit to come off for a start, and it also answers the question about the NHS maintaining addicts, because that's exactly what they're doing with methadone.
Yeah.
I think if you were to be prescribed legally heroin, the quality is always the same.
Yeah.
It takes every junkie that buys on the street takes it home.
Yeah.
So it's taken away from children. It's taken away from the home. I would think it would reduce the number of people that took heroin, because they would have to go to that place and there would be a certain stigma attached to that.
Yeah.
You'd be surrounded by expert help should there be, as has already been said, an overdose or they spread the disease.
But Andy, I'm hearing all of that. But then, would you be able to look Kirsty or somebody with cancer in the eye and say, this is the right use of NHS money, feeding my habit that I willfully got myself strung out on in the first place?
I take your point, but they're doing it right now anyway. The NHS is giving the methadone. All they're doing is changing substance.
Fair point. Fair point. Andy, thank you.
It's my belief that that most people who are addicted actually don't want to be addicted. I think that I'm not going to throw any statistics at you, but I would guess that kind of like 80% of people who are addicted to heroin would actually like to be off it. In which case, if it's supplied in this controlled environment, there's the opportunity for them to make build that bridge back to a real life again.
OK. Lots of thoughts there. Lots of thoughts. Thank you for all the calls. After the break,